All's Well That Ends Well by Ben Lewis, Shelby Tenney, and Garrett Warren. So here's a basic summary of All's Well That Ends Well. Helena is the orphan daughter of a famous physician, and she is the ward of the Countess of Roussillon. And she's hopelessly in love with her son, Count Bertram, who's been sent to the court of the King of France. Now, despite her beauty and worth, Helena has no hope of attracting Bertram, since she is of low birth and he's a nobleman. However, when word comes that the king is ill, she goes to Paris and, using her father's arts that she learned from him, cures the illness. In return, she's given the hand of any man in the realm by the King of France. She picks Bertram, and he's not okay with this at all, and shortly after their marriage, he goes to France for a war. He's accompanied by a guy named Paroles, and they go to fight in the army of the Duke of Florence. So Helena is sent home to the Countess and receives a letter from Bertram telling her that he will never be her true spouse unless she can get his family ring from his finger and become pregnant with his child, neither of which he declares will ever come to pass. The Countess, who loves Helena and approves of the match, tries to comfort her, but the distraught young woman departs for Roussillon, planning to make a religious pilgrimage. Meanwhile in Florence, Bertram has become a general in the Duke's army. Helena comes to the city and discovers that her husband is trying to seduce the virginal daughter of a kindly widow. With the connivance of the daughter, named Diana, she contrives to trick Bertram. He gives Diana his ring as a token of his love, and when he comes to her room at night, Helena is in the bed instead of Diana, and they make love without him realizing that it's her. At the same time, two lords in the army expose Paroles, the guy who came with Bertram to fight, as a coward and a villain, and Paroles falls out of Bertram's favor. Meanwhile, false messengers have come to the camp bearing word that Helena is dead, because Helena spread this rumor, and with the war drawing to a close, Bertram decides to go to France, because he thinks Helena's not there. He didn't know this, but Helena follows him, and she's accompanied by Diana and the widow that she met. In Roussillon, everyone is mourning Helena as dead. The king is visiting and consents to Bertram marrying the daughter of an old, faithful lord named Lefeu. However, he notices a ring on Bertram's finger that formerly belonged to Helena. It was a gift from the king after she saved his life. And Helena gave the ring to Diana in Florence, and in turn gave it to her would-be lover, that is, Bertram. And Bertram doesn't know what's going on, but then Diana and her mother appear to explain, and they are followed by Helena, who tells her husband that both his conditions have been fulfilled, and Bertram is just completely blown out of the water, and he says, okay, I will be a good husband, and there is general rejoicing.
This is our performance slide. At the bottom, there is a posted video of our performance. It is over the last scene. The characters used were the king and servant, played by Garrett Warren, Bertram, played by Ben Lewis, and Diana and Helena, played by Shelby Tenney. A little background leading up to the film. Bertram had fled and was essentially hiding out in France with the army. And while he was there, he met a beautiful young lady by the name of Diana. And unbeknownst to him, she was a very good friend of Helena. And they had decided that together they would lure him into unknowingly fulfilling the task he had laid out to Helena to do before she could marry him. And this is where we tie into where our video begins. So your wife Helena is dead now. Your abusive behavior towards her is uncalled for.
Yes, Your Highness. I apologize for the way I treated her, and I hope you can forgive me.
Okay. I'm gonna let you get married another time. This time they're of a trusted lord. I'll see the ring of your commitment.
Here, Lord.
Wait a sec. Isn't that the ring Helena I gave to Helena when she killed me?
What?
It is. How did you get that?
No, I swear it's not her ring.
Did you murder your wife?
No, I got this ring from some girl in Italy that passed by.
If you can't explain yourself without lying, you should die.
No, please.
My lord, what is it? There is a girl here to see you. She says she knows why Bertrand has the ring. Bertrand?
I don't know who she is.
Hey, yeah, Bertrand is my husband because we exchanged rings.
I don't know you.
And what is this?
Okay, maybe I did sleep with her.
Girl, where did you get Helen's ring?
Oh, it's a long story, really, and rather complicated than that. You see, a long time ago in a country far, far away.
Oh, so now you're gonna lie to me too, huh?
What? No.
Guards, take Bertrand away to be executed and take this common thing to jail.
I didn't do it, I swear. I don't know what's going on.
I wish Helen were here. I miss her a lot.
Hey, guys, what's up?
You're alive.
Yeah, I know.
But you're dead.
Well, then I guess I'm a ghost. Let's come back to haunt you then, for all the crap you're really fearing. But it's whatever, because I completed those tasks you told me I had to do in order for you to love me back.
I don't love you, and I never will. Unless you get pregnant with my kid and take this ring from my finger, I will never be your husband.
See, I've got your ring and your baby.
Okay, then. I'll be a good husband from now on. Even though this whole situation was really weird.
Well, I guess all's well that ends well.
Famous quotes from the play. The first quote we used was "Love all, trust a few, do wrong to none." From the text it said, "Contend for empire and thee, and thy godness, share with thy birthright. Love all, trust a few, do wrong to none. Be able for thine enemy rather in power than use, and keep thy friend." The next quote we used was "My friends were poor but honest." From the text, "Here on my knee, before high heaven and you, that before you and next unto high heaven, I love your son. My friends were poor but honest, so that's my love, but not offended for it hurts not him. That he is love for me, I follow him not by any token of presumptuous suit." The next quote was from "Lowest place when victorious things proceed, the place is dignified by the doer's deed." From the text it says, "Indifference of mighty, if she be all that is virtuous, save what thou dislikest, a poor physician's daughter, thou dislikest, of virtue for the name, but do not so. From lowest place, when virtuous things proceed, the place is dignified by the doer's deed." And finally, the last quote was, "No legacy is so rich as honesty." In the text it says, "Let's return again and suffice ourselves with the report of it. Well done, and take heed of this French earl. The honor of a maid is her name, and no legacy is so rich as honesty." The vocabulary that we used in this play, the first word being flourish, thriving, to reach a height of development or influence. In the play, it said, the king and LeFou are having a conversation, and it says, "In you it best lies, otherwise the seducer flourishes, and a poor maid is undone." Our next vocabulary word was beseech, which means to ask strongly or beg for something. From the text, Paralis is saying, "I beseech your honor to hear me one single word." He is desperate for someone to listen to what he has to say to them, but nobody really seems to be paying attention or wants to listen. Our next vocabulary word is derive, which means to take, receive, or obtain, especially from a specified source. In the play, Countess is saying, "A very attentive fellow, and full of wickedness. My son corrupts a well-derived nature with his inducement." The next word we use is notorious, which means generally known and talked of, or well known, usually for something bad. In the play, Helena is saying, "One that goes with him, I love him for his sake, and yet I know him a notorious liar. Think him a great way fool, subtly a coward, Yes, these fixed evils sit so fit in him. And the last vocabulary word that we wrote was inaudible, which means unable to be heard. In the text, the king is saying, let's take the instant by the forward top, for we are old, and our quickest decrees. The inaudible and noiseless foot of time seals era, we can affect them. You remember the daughter of this Lord? It's saying time is slipping away, and it can get away from you because you won't hear it. It's just going to keep going on forever, and you can lose track of it.
This is our slide on originality. It was originally a comedy written by William Shakespeare in 1604 or 1605. The historians haven't exactly been able to lock that down. In 1623, they published a collection of William Shakespeare's plays. Modern scholars commonly refer to it as the First Folio. The First Folio is considered one of the most influential books ever published in the English language. The First Folio is arguably the only reliable text for about 20 plays and a valuable source text for many of those previously published. The folio includes all of the plays generally accepted to be Shakespeare's, with the exception of a few that may have just been added in from other authors. The play was inspired, like many of Shakespearean plays, by folk tales that had been recorded in older literary works. The play has many dark and unsettling tones, which stems from a very uneasy comedy from Helena sneaking into a room with Bertram. All's Well That Ends Well is often called a problem play or a problem comedy because he used an unconventional approach. It also has the distinction of providing the least realistic happy ending in Shakespearean literature, which partially explains why the play isn't as popular as some of Shakespeare's other works, but it makes it much more memorable because of the different approach by Shakespeare, even though it may not be as popular among the masses.
So in 1610, William Shakespeare's midlife crisis hit. This was about 6 years away from his death in 1616. He was 46 at the time, and he was panicked because his plays just weren't attracting the same amount of crowds that they had been. So he sought help, and he found John Fletcher, who was about 15 years younger than him, and he was one of the most prolific and influential playwrights of his day. And he kind of got Shakespeare back into the swing of things and helped to inspire him to write All's Well That Ends Well. And Fletcher brought a new dimension of something called tragic comedy, which was a mix of tragedy and comedy to William Shakespeare's writing, and helped to kind of reinvigorate his career. And Shakespeare tried to mimic this new tragicomedy, and this is what sparked All's Well That Ends Well. And because of its dark tone and unsettling themes, All's Well That Ends Well is often called a problem play or a problem comedy, because it doesn't really fit between a tragedy and a comedy. It's a mixture of both, so it's not very easily identifiable like the rest of William Shakespeare's plays are. And the basis of this play comes from a folktale that dated back so many years before the writing of All's Well That Ends Well.
This is our works cited page. These are the sites that we used for our PowerPoint and the speaking that was done. Shelby Tenney did a title slide and summary, which was slide 1 and 2. Garrett Warren did slide 3, which was our performance.